When you feel like life has dealt you a hand of unfair cards, instead of folding, you double down and you stuck in the game. You faced battles, you felt broken, but hey, do us a favor. Put your hand on your heart. You feel that? You're still here. Welcome to the Resilience Files Unlocked, where survival meets transformation.
Hey, I'm Angelica Washington.
I'm Carrie Bernance.
And I'm Jesse B. Evans, and you're listening to
The Resilience Files.
Unlocked. Just a trigger warning, guys. This episode, we will be talking about frustration while navigating the medical system. Please feel free to take care of yourself the way that you need to.
And just a disclaimer, we are not therapists. We are just survivors sharing stories and amplifying voices. We're not here to diagnose or provide any specific clinical advice. We are just here to talk and discuss with other humans.
Yes, and we have a special guest on today, Mike. Mike is a devoted father whose life has forever changed when his daughter, Vivian, was diagnosed with epilepsy.
And reading Mike Knox' story today for us is, I'm so excited, is actor Gilbert Glenn Brown. You may have seen him play my dad on the DC Universe series Stargirl. You may also have known him from Young and the Restless, playing Jet Slade, or playing the iconic Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the Academy Award-winning film Respect. Thank you. I was going to call it Aretha, but I was like, it's not Aretha. Aretha is the performer. In the Academy Award-winning film Respect, welcome, Gilbert Brown. Thank you so much for being here with us. We are so excited to have you. And thank you for reading
Totally
Mike's story.
Oh, my pleasure. Totally my pleasure. Life before my daughter's epilepsy diagnosis was full of the typical joys and challenges of parenting. And she was a bright, energetic child with an insatiable curiosity for the world around her. Our days were filled with laughter, play dates, and milestones that seemed to come effortlessly. Watching her grow, we had just bought a home, and my wife and I both had stable careers. We never imagined that our world would soon be turned upside down by a condition we knew nothing about. The day of her first seizure is forever etched in my memory. It was a routine morning, and my wife went to get Vivian in her crib. Her small body was convulsing uncontrollably, and we tried to process what was happening. Time seemed to slow down as we called 911, helplessly waiting for paramedics to arrive. The minutes stretched into eternity, and in that moment, fear gripped me like never before. Seeing my child in distress, unable to understand what was happening to her, was the most terrifying experience of my life. The paramedics never arrived, and we frantically drove Vivian through heavy traffic to the hospital. At the hospital, we were told Vivian was having a seizure and that she might not live. A priest arrived and read us the last rites. Vivian flatlined and was thankfully revived by the hospital staff. In the days and weeks that followed, we were thrust into a whirlwind of medical tests, hospital visits, and consultations. I'm going to take it back. In the days and weeks that followed, we were thrust into a whirlwind of medical tests, hospital visits, and consultations with neurologists. The diagnosis of epilepsy came years later. It was both a relief and a new source of fear. While we finally had an answer, we now face an uncertain path forward. There's no cure for epilepsy. Questions flooded our minds. Would she be able to live a normal life? How would this affect her future? The weight of the unknown was overwhelming. Despite the initial fear and uncertainty, we refused to let epilepsy define our daughter's life. We educated ourselves, connected with support groups, and worked closely with her doctors to find the right medication and treatment plan. There were setbacks, adjustments to medication, lifestyle changes, and moments of deep frustration. But with each challenge, we grew stronger as a family. We learned to recognize triggers, manage symptoms, and most importantly, support her in a way that made her feel empowered rather than restricted. We spent years trying to find the right doctor. We met some truly horrible people working in the medical field. After 5 years and many medical tests, we found a doctor at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. We were looking at brain surgery, but after 7 days in the hospital, we were told surgery would not work. Seizures were coming from 3 different areas of the brain. Our doctor had another plan. This was the turning point in our battle with epilepsy. The doctor was showing us a way out. She showed us a device the size of a silver dollar that she was sure could stop the seizures that had been destroying Vivian's brain. The device was a vagus nerve stimulator, a device implanted on the left side of the chest that sends electric impulses to the brain through the vagus nerve. It was the only option we had left. Vivian received her first VNS therapy at the age of 8. It was an outpatient procedure, and she was back home in the afternoon playing with her friends and eating a happy meal. 6 months later, Vivian woke up one morning and got dressed by herself. She made breakfast and packed her lunch. She put together a Lego set and then woke me up to say that she wanted to go to school. These were all things she was not able to do before without assistance. A light had switched on and she was a completely different child than before the VNS therapy. She was able to be a kid again because of the vagus nerve stimulator. She was able to stay focused in school and brought her grades from D's to A's. The vagus nerve stimulator was keeping her mind on track and allowing her to learn again. Today, while epilepsy is still a part of her life, it no longer dictates it. Vivian is 8 years seizure-free. She has learned to understand and manage her condition with remarkable resilience. Through it all, she has remained the same curious, determined, and joyful child she has always been. This journey has been one of fear, perseverance, and triumph. It has taught us the power of resilience, the importance of awareness, and the unbreakable strength of family. Epilepsy may have entered our lives unexpectedly, but it has also shown us the depth of our courage and the boundless love we share. I'm thankful for every day without seizures.
Wow. Wow.
Beautiful.
This is beautiful.
We
Beautiful.
haven't smiled this much in a long time.
Thank you
beautiful.
so
Wow.
much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Gilbert, for
Gilbert.
reading that.
No problem at all.
So, Mike, you already answered our question. So, also tell us, how's your daughter doing today? What's she like today?
She's doing great.
How old is she?
She's 18. She's a junior in high school. She was in the hospital she missed a lot of school, so she stayed back a year. But she pretty much went from having no friends to failing out of school to getting straight A's and having friends. Just being a kid, and being a teenager. And, I couldn't ask for a better life and a better child.
Yeah, as a mother, a parent myself, I can only imagine what you're going through, and just to hear. First off, we want to say thank you so much for sharing the story with us. I know there's a lot of parents that's listening on today, and I think the hardest thing is you want to keep your child as safe as possible, and you want to make sure that they are healthy, and you're doing all the right things. And at that time, can you mention how old was she at that moment before the epilepsy, like everything began?
She was 2. I mean, we put her to. She had no. You would have never known. She was just everything. She hit all her milestones. I mean, we put her to sleep the night before, and she had her Barbie dolls with her, and woke up to a nightmare, and it was kind of years of trying to figure out and diagnose. And before that, I mean, driving to the hospital that morning, I didn't even know where the hospital was. So it was like all this stuff where you're thinking, why didn't you prepare for that? I just had no idea. It wasn't even in my mind. Everything was pretty much perfect, and then you got hit with that curveball.
Can you talk more about that feeling that you had when you first discovered her in that state? Like, what was going through your mind? How was your body feeling?
It's definitely an outer body experience because I had been sleeping and my wife, got up, got a cup of coffee and went to just check on her routinely. And so it was just shock. And then is this really, the disbelief, is this going on? And then calling 911 and they're, you're thinking 911 is going to answer and they're busy. They don't care. You're driving, you're thinking all these, you're going to have all this support. So you really feel alone. Even when you get into getting to the hospital, you really realize, oh, this is shift change. These guys are exhausted. They don't want somebody. And it really was a lot of luck. It was that doctor that saved her life that day. He was transferring to another hospital the next day.
Wow.
So just the fact that he was there and he knew what to do, because I didn't know it was a seizure. I'd never seen a seizure in my life. I mean, really, I'd maybe seen one on TV, but I had no idea. And I had no idea how a lot of us can be affected by seizures, affected by epilepsy. So it was really a crash course in being a parent and healthcare system, and just, really thinking, going from things are going great to things are, it's a total dumpster fire.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing that. One of the things that you mentioned is that you said she was 2 years old. She'd never been through any of this before. And you all didn't expect it. You thought, to yourselves. And I want to preference normal with, like, many different child can be normal in many different facets. So when I say your daughter was normal in the sense that you said she met all her milestones and all of this, did you all have any family history of any epilepsies or any type of abnormal tests? You know how I remember when I was pregnant, and you or your wife may remember, they run so many different tests to see if your child has A, B, or C.
Yeah, and pretty much just after running all the tests, it was found out that it was a fetal stroke, and so it was pretty much like the stroke went through to Vivian's brain, and it can kind of pinpoint. There's like a calcification in the CAT scan, and then part of her, from there, her brain didn't form. But you would have never known because we didn't get an MRI or a CAT scan until after she was 2. And so what I mean by that is just she was, she went from crawling to walking to talking. And that's what I mean. It was like we were in a routine of every night she would say, kiss my Barbie dolls, good night. And she was just a happy kid. And so then you go from, her total, like, and kind of in a coma state. I mean, she was just kind of like a little zombie because her memory had been wiped away from that seizure. I mean, it was a grand mal seizure. And she basically had to, like, relearn everything because of that. And then having more and more seizures, it would just, like, setbacks all the time. And then you would have family didn't understand, friends didn't understand. So they were kind of it wasn't purposely, but they were just abandoning you because their kids were okay, your kid's not. And then you're trying to find these other parents that understand what you're going through, and you kind of find them at children's hospitals. But really you get isolated because you're just stuck living, every single day with a sick kid.
Yeah. Mike, I just want to say thank you again for sharing your story. One of my nephews actually has epilepsy. So this actually hits very close to home with my family, and especially with what my brother and sister-in-law have experienced and been experiencing. So hearing your story and hearing you talk about being a parent who can't really find other people to really relate to that, and how everyone else's life just goes on, while you're still in this place trying to figure out what's going on with your child, how to help your child. So my question is, how did receiving the epilepsy diagnosis change your perspective on parenting or on life in general?
I mean, getting the diagnosis took a very long time, and it was really my wife and I doing the research. So I always suggest to people, like, you got to meet the doctors halfway. But it was, just kind of a devastation, but also good. It's not other things. Like, it was always in my head of, it could always be worse. It could always be worse. And we just took it. It really became, rather than thinking about a future, it was day by day. And so,
yeah.
And that's why when she got the vagus nerve stimulator, we were looking at maybe seizures would stop for a month, and it just happened to be a great success. And not because there's no cure for epilepsy, and we were just looking for some. I was looking for a good night's sleep because her seizures were at night, and my wife and I would take turns watching her all night long, and so it affected everything. Where I just had, I'm sleeping in my car at work, and you're nobody at work understands that your child is sick, and they don't really care.
Right.
They don't care that missing work, or they don't care that you're tired. Nobody really cares. So that was a big factor. Was I just wanted to get one night, 8 hours of sleep. So when that time came where we all slept, which was that time where she got up and made her lunch in the Lego, we all slept through the night just by being exhausted. And that's why she was also able to get up before us and put that stuff together, just because simply we were just always exhausted.
Yeah. Do you happen to have other children as well?
No, and that was kind of a factor for us. We were in and out of the hospital so many times, and I just thought, like, I need my wife. She needs me, and to be in, carrying another kid with us to the hospital, because it was long years of time. It was touch and go, and it was really, life or death for my child. I mean, I still have PTSD from it, but it was, like when she sleeps too long, I'm still checking on her, just to see simply if she is alive. And that was just you would hear from other people, oh, you can't live your life that way. And that was just simply our life. That was.
Well, you know what?
Really.
And I commend you so much for that. I think, first off, I want to acknowledge you and your wife are definitely heroes in my book. And I'm so happy that you guys advocated for your child. I think multiple times in this, first start of this podcast interview, you mentioned how much you advocated for your daughter, how many times you guys switched the roles, how many times you had to fight for the epilepsy diagnosis. And I think there's people that's listening today that may not understand what their kid may be going through, or their mom or their dad or whoever there is, but they have to keep looking. You have to do, like you said, meet the doctors halfway. And so I just want to commend you for that. If you don't mind, I would love for you to just take us back for a moment to that first moment that she had the seizure, when your experience in the hospital. I know you mentioned that the experience wasn't always good, and that doctor was leaving that day that helped save your daughter's life. Just for our listeners that may wonder, like, what that experience was like, how did they say, okay, she's having a seizure right now, and then they ruled out X, Y, and Z?
Because it was just the doctor going, I'm identifying that this is a seizure, and he was walking it through us, but you're not processing anything. I mean, when I talk about a priest coming in and reading last rites, like, I'd never had that happen before. I had no idea what was going on. I'm like, well, why are you reading the last rites? Because the hospital brought them in thinking that my daughter was going to pass away. And the doctor is thinking, she's having low oxygen and low blood pressure and all the signs of this body is about to expire. But me as a parent, I had no idea. I didn't have medical training at that point. So I really did put a lot of trust into that doctor, and he was fantastic. We even went, later on to, we came back the next day to thank him. We brought everybody a gift basket, and we all cried together. And that was a horrible time, but it was also a great time because that guy was there. He knew what to do, thankfully. Because other times where we go to the emergency room, they didn't know what to do. And so it was kind of like a Groundhog's Day, where the first time the guy got it right, other times they didn't get it too right. And so you're just living crisis to crisis and kind of always living in fear.
And for the listeners that don't know, can you explain what last rites is?
Sure. It's if you're religious, somebody's going to come in and read you last rites, whatever your affiliation is. I didn't tell them what it was. I think they just happened to have somebody there, but they're reading the last rites where the person is expected to pass away. And so you're having some sort of guidance. When we've been in the hospital before, somebody's walked by. Different denominations will come by. You can request somebody, which is great because you don't really know what to do. And it really is, when you're in the hospital and you're looking, towards death, that is what you're looking for. You're looking for something to help you out and give you an answer for something.
I agree. Crazy to say this, but I had the same experience actually happen to me when I was in the hospital in New York from getting hit by a drunk driver. I remember a priest coming by and them telling my mom before surgery that my mom had to sign a power of attorney over me in case I passed away. And that was really scary. Yeah. I was like super conscious. So I commend you all. I would love to know, as you guys were processing this fear and uncertainty that was going on, and you also still had work, you still had things to do. Your kid had school the next morning, but now this happened. So when life happens to you in this instant and everything changed for work, for school, for life. Maybe take us through that steps of like what was going on and how did you guys process all of that?
Sure. I think a few hours, I'd been late for work, so I didn't really notice what time it was. I think it was about 10 o'clock. So I was supposed to be work at 8, and I called my boss, and he did not give me the answer that I wanted to hear. He didn't care about my kid. He didn't care about my family. He just cared about, well, why don't you have your paperwork? Why isn't that done? You know? And I was like blown away by that, because I'm like, I can't believe this person is this insensitive, like just does not care. And so that was a huge learning experience for me also, is like me thinking, oh, the people at my office are going to care. Nobody cared. And then I continued to get that from different bosses. I mean, it never stopped, because they just simply did not care. You would think that they would, but they didn't.
That is oh, go ahead.
I just always repeat that to people, because especially when you're dealing with the hospital, anybody that has sick kids or they're sick themselves, just expect it's not always going to happen. But I just always got such negative replies from people. So my experience wasn't as good as other people's.
You know, I had a similar experience after I was attacked, and I couldn't walk, I couldn't type, I couldn't do much of anything for quite some time. And so when I spoke to my job, they told me, they said, you know, do what you need to do, take care of yourself. You're what's most important. I was like, wow, they really care about me. And I had a project that was due, and a couple months passed, and I finally got to the project, and I came back to them, and they were like, well, you know, we're not going to pay you for this, because I'm a contractor. I was a freelancer. They were like, we're not going to pay you for this. We don't need this anymore. And I was like, well, I wish you would have told me this.
Right.
So they were like, well, it's months later. What do you expect? I was like, when you told me to take care of myself, I thought you meant it. My bad. Like,
Right.
it really surprised me. So, I mean, I'm right there with you, Mike. Like, a lot of these jobs, they don't really, you're just a number to them. That
You
they
are
really don't care about.
replaceable.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really frustrating.
And I think,
Really frustrating.
yeah, it is really frustrating. I think just what Angelica just said is that you're replaceable. And I think sometimes we prioritize work and we prioritize these things over us that have no control or don't care about our life. They don't care about our children and all of that. Don't get me wrong, some employers do, but the reality is that most people don't. So whatever you do, you have to take care of you and yours
Yes.
first, and then everything else is subsiding as second, third, fourth. Like, and the sad reality is that some people only experience or understand that when they go through a tragic reality of themselves, or they have it really near and dear and close to them. So if you're listening today and you're questioning if your employer is going to care about you or not, you know, just think about this.
Prioritize yourself.
Yeah.
And Mike, you had mentioned experiencing difficulties with the medical field in the hospital. I want to know more of like, what were there any specific experiences that you went through that were really difficult before you found the Children's Hospital? And I also would like to shout out Children's Hospital LA. I worked there for 4 years as an event
Wow.
host. So that hospital is very near and dear to me. And I'm really, really, really glad to hear that it worked out for you at that hospital. But before we get to that, give us a couple of examples of what you mean by the frustration and difficulty with the medical field.
Sure. To start with, I always talk about where we had to 911 was busy, so we had to drive there. Well, the way that it's set up with 911 is
What?
Yeah,
911
turns out.
was busy.
Yeah, let's go back to that.
911 was
Is that,
busy.
and when you said that earlier, actually, that the ambulance didn't even show up and you had to hop in your car yourself and go, all I could think of is, this is sad. This is like, when do we get to reality that when we need help, the help doesn't come? And I'm happy that you actually had a car, because just imagine the people that
If
don't have a
don't.
car,
yeah, you're totally right.
can't drive,
Oh my God.
and don't have the resources to be able to take their child or their elderly grandparent or whoever
Yep.
for help.
And then they have the nerve to charge thousands of dollars for that ride, and y'all don't even show up.
Right.
Rude.
That's okay. So continue. Sorry,
Sorry.
911 was busy.
Thank you, Mike.
At least you know what I went through. So the way that it's set up in Los Angeles is that to get admitted into the hospital, you've got to have called 911, and then the ambulance comes to get you and takes you to the hospital. They don't, to my shock, they don't want you showing up unexpectedly. So they didn't really want, the only reason that we got through the door just happened to be open for the emergency room, so we ran through it. But if it had been closed at that time, we had to go around to the side. So other times when she's had the seizures, they've made us wait while she's seizing in the lobby because they just simply weren't trained to identify what a seizure was, or thinking that it was a little, wasn't life threatening. And so my wife and I had to go sit down. We had to threaten the hospital that was closest to us with a lawsuit and sit down with the board and say, we're not asking for money. We're just asking for you guys to simply do your job. And we'd have to carry around a course of action with us every time they went to the hospital. So one of the things that I love about her medical device is I don't have to go to the hospital anymore. And it cuts out all this stuff where we'd always explaining what we were going through, because you'd always have new medical staff. And even sometimes we'd see the same people, they just forgot because they see so many other people. And then you're looking for outside help. So then I would go to like the epilepsy foundations, and they didn't care either because they're just about donations and making money. And that was a big shock to me. And I try to tell that to people that are just getting into epilepsy, that, hey, they might not want to help you. And then, people are thinking, oh, they're going to help me, and they don't. And, this has been going on since my daughter was 2.
Decades.
And getting back to what you were saying, where the foundations, they're not helping you get a job. They're not helping you with transportation. They're not helping you navigate healthcare. They're just about, a walk or a run or donating. And some are better than others, but I had a lot of problems. Like one of my main things was just trying to get laws passed because teachers didn't have to be trained at the time to identify seizures. So the schools didn't care that my daughter was having seizures. I would find her having a seizure on the yard, and the yard staff would be like, no, she's just tired. She's sleeping. And I would have to sit and wait every morning because her seizures would be either out of her sleep or in the morning. So I would have to sit at the school, and then the school didn't want any parents there. They didn't like that. And so I just have to break their kind of rules just simply because I'm just trying to keep my kid alive. So it was anything with medical, anything with any of these foundations. It was just over and over frustrating. And the solution for me was we just need more laws in the state of California. The state of California has the most kids with epilepsy, and it's got the most adults with epilepsy. Wow. And there's, worldwide, there's 60 million people with epilepsy, and it's one of the most underfunded brain disorders. There's no cure for it. It's been around thousands of years. And it's still, my daughter would get bullied at school because people still think it's a joke. They still see videos. The kids would see videos on their phones and make fun of my daughter. And so it was.
Oh my God. Kids were recording it?
They weren't recording it, but they were seeing fake seizure videos because they're monetized on YouTube.
Oh.
And so then they would.
So awful.
They would reenact that to my child. And then I would explain that to the school. Hey, could we not do this? And the school was like, oh, there's no policy for that. So a lot.
Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous.
Unacceptable.
You know what, Mike? I just want to tell you again. I know I've said this before, but I am so thankful that you and your wife have been advocating for your daughter, because you having to go to the board of the hospitals, the hospital board, and to not only advocate for her rights, saying that she's coming in with a seizure, having to have a seizure in the lobby, and you to continue to advocate that. You said you had to carry a course. What did you have to carry around?
It was an action plan, basically, that was signed by the board that was saying, hey, this
action plan.
Yeah, this child has seizures. Because what their policy was always to get her into there and then, give her a medication or an Ativan, where a few years later, I got that same medication. So I didn't want them to overdose my child. But because I'm not a doctor, they didn't want to listen. So you're really like running this fine line. If the paramedics came and I said that I gave my daughter her rescue medication, then they would accuse me of drugging my kid. So it was like, you were
absolutely ridiculous
in all of this politics from, it's the hospital or it's the paramedics or it's 911. 911 told me one time, oh, seizures aren't a medical, it's not
emergency.
911 in LA County said seizures aren't medical problem, and she hung up. And well, what am I supposed to do? Yeah, what am I supposed to do now? Here I am driving again to the hospital. What's the action afterwards so that person is corrected to understand? So I was always learning on the go, trying to figure out, can we get people together and get an action plan? And that was what, at least an action plan for the hospital, where we got that down.
I'm sorry, I'm so frustrated that you had to jump through these amount of hoops, not only with the school system, not only with the hospital, not only with the 911 operator and the city themselves. You're right. California needs to pass more laws for us to be number one in epilepsy statewide, and then for it to be over 60 million Americans dealing with this should be like a U.S. world issue, and it's very frustrating. You have to deal with this. I'm happy that we can inform our listeners on today, and if we can sign a petition, let us know, because I'm ready to
please
sign.
send it our way. We will make sure that we put that in the description. If you have any petition links or anything, we will sign it. Our listeners will sign it.
Yeah,
because that's insane.
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised. This sounds on track with what I went through when I was in the hospital.
Wow.
Like, I experienced an insane level of frustration. Like, for one, you're in the hospital. That's stressful enough. But then you're having to navigate all of this red tape, the insurance, and then the doctor is really not listening to you. And then it's so incredibly frustrating. So my heart goes out to you, and it goes out to anybody that's currently going through it. And I always say, I was very lucky because I had a friend who was a doctor, and so he would often be in the room whenever they would come in the morning doing their rounds on me or whatever, and he would ask the questions that needed to be asked. But I would always think, like, man, what if I didn't have this friend? What if I didn't know? What if I don't know what I don't know? Then I'm screwed. And so, yeah, I just want to echo Carrie, like, dude, good for you.
Yeah.
Like, you really went to bat for your daughter, you and your wife.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, anybody that's listening to this, you need to do the same.
Yeah.
I stayed on the phone with patient advocacy.
Yes,
Man.
report these people through
Listen.
patient advocacy. I'm going to say this again. Sorry. Report any individuals in the hospital to patient advocacy. It is their right, it is their duty to follow up. And if anything happens on their watch and you reported that, sue them. Sue them. All right.
I was sitting in the hospital not doing much of anything, and my friend asked, well, what's your care plan for him? And they were like, your care plan? And they said, yes, I'm assuming you discussed it this morning in your meeting. And then she was like, are you a doctor? He said, yeah, I am. And then the way I
Everything
was
changed.
treated completely changed.
Yep.
Everything. And I was pissed because I'm like, what if I didn't have that?
Yeah.
That is so,
What
it
about
is so
the people
frustrating.
who
Just-
don't have a friend
Yeah.
who's a doctor?
And what if you didn't have that
Exactly.
person
Didn't do that.
advocating for you? Exactly.
I will say I normally wouldn't have been surprised by the treatment because, like Jesse said, which I was there for his incident, so I was able to see firsthand how just negligent they could be. But I think I'm more shocked because this is a child we're talking about.
Yes.
I'm shocked that this is a
2
2-year-old. This is a
years old.
toddler.
3 years
I
old.
think there would be just so much more compassion for a child. I mean, or maybe that's how I am. I'm very protective over kids. I just feel like kids are to be protected at all costs. Kids don't got nothing to do with adult drama.
They're innocent.
They're innocent. They're children. I'm shocked, and I'm literally upset for you,
Ugh.
and your wife that you experienced this. I'm really sorry, but we have to continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I have a question.
Yeah.
So they told you that brain surgery was not an option at first. Walk us through that.
Yeah,
Walk us
and
through
was
what
that
happened.
before or after you got to the Children's Hospital of Atlanta? Because, I mean, sorry, of Los Angeles. Sorry, guys, not Atlanta. Before, was the brain surgery thought before or after you got to the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles?
So,
And how did you even get introduced to that?
because it's how most of the medical policy is. It's medications and it's brain surgery, and you've got to go then find the doctor that wants to do that. And a lot of it is like, war. It's like, how are you going to win this war? And you're asking the helicopter pilot, well, you just bomb everybody. And then you're asking ground infantry, oh, you just shoot them this way. So you're trying to find the right doctor. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know there was a difference with different doctors. I just thought they all did the same. So you got to find a specialist in it. And Los Angeles at the time, Children's Hospital, didn't have a specialty ward in epilepsy. So we went to UCLA, where they said they had one, but they really didn't have one. The doctor just didn't want to admit that they didn't have one. So then we went back to Children's Hospital again, which our doctor had come from the East Coast and set up an old specifically for epilepsy for EEGs. And that were really the turning point was, I mean, she was somebody that we'd had all these horrible doctors before that really, UCLA, we would wait 5 hours and then the doctor would say, we'll put her on another medication. And then that medication would she'd have horrible seizures and horrible side effects. And you just think, well, why did you change that? And then you find out that doctor was getting paid to push that medication because you can find all of that.
Wow.
And even though it's shocking, you realize a lot of them are getting paid to push these medications, and so it's not really in their they're not in their best interest to try to find a cure. Really, they're not going to say that, but
Yeah, sometimes they just want to put a band-aid on it.
yeah, and you're trying to find a cure. Like without insurance, the medication that she takes is $1,500 a month, and there's been times where they have
Wow.
canceled the insurance, not said anything, and I'm scrambling trying to be able to pay for it just for a month. So I was always thinking like, I don't understand how anybody else is able to, that doesn't have the means to be able to afford these medications, because a lot of them are just outrageous. So then with the brain surgery, specifically that hospital was Children's Hospital Los Angeles was a place that had done it before and had a track record of it. So then you're meeting, trying to figure out, is this going to be safe? Is she going to survive that? We looked a couple times where they were saying we can't specifically go in this area because that'll cause her to be blind. So there were just a lot of factors, a lot of testing, just so many different tests, so many stays at the hospital. Also, certain hospitals would not take tests from other hospitals, so you'd have to redo the test again. And you just think like, this is
Oh my God.
this is ridiculous.
They have you running a rat race.
Yeah, you do. And then insurance is making you, like the very first time we had to get an MRI, they were like, you have to go to Orange County, which is, an hour or two away. And
Yeah.
my child was not good with motion. That would cause her to have seizures. So even in the car to get her to places could cause her to have a seizure. So it was just a mess all around, and just trying to navigate everything and figure it all out. So the brain surgery was like, that was the first option where you might have a cure because they can go in there. They showed on the MRI that there was a spot in the brain. But the first doctor that we had, that was this renowned guy, misdiagnosed it. He was showing us something completely different for 5 years.
Wow.
So the doctor at Children's Hospital was like, no, you can see her brain wasn't formed at all. She's got this dark matter in the brain that leaked out. And so she's not learning in certain areas. That's the reason why she's been having seizures. So it was like, okay, well, now I trust this lady. She at least is giving me some information, stuff that I can comprehend. Because a lot of times, they're speaking to you and you're not understanding anything what they're saying. And they're kind of doing that.
Right.
They're kind of doing that on purpose. There's a lot of ego that goes on with it. So I like this one doctor because she didn't have that ego. It was just, I'm here to find out how we can help your daughter. And so then, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You can go, Mike. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the doctor before for 5 years never said anything about the VNS, the vagus nerve stimulator, never mentioned it. And it had been around 20 years. And that's the thing that ultimately saved my child's life. He never brought it up. He said it wasn't going to work. So
Wow.
I have a lot of resentment against that other doctor.
Absolutely.
I can imagine. I guess one of the questions before we get to the vagus nerve stimulator I wanted to know is, I'm sure a lot of people are listening in, when you're navigating the unknown of the medical field and you're kind of taking these risks on your daughter in a sense, trying this test, that test, the next. How did you stay so calm and how did you make these decisions? Because I think there's a lot of people here. Some people are doing it single-handedly, one-parent households, and some people may have two, or they may have extended family. Did you guys, do you have a faith that you believe in, or how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of praying because you didn't have anything else to do. But I relied on my wife was always there, a lot stronger than I was. And then my mom was always there to help out. And I did always think about that. Like, if I didn't have this extended family, or I didn't have my wife with me, and a lot of times even simply where, they would cancel I think about this all the time, when they would cancel the health insurance, people who have epilepsy and they're taking medications, whatever it is, your mind isn't all there. And if somebody's telling you, no, we're not covering your medication, it gets so frustrating that you don't even want to even, try hard to fight them, because it just gets, so exhausting. There's so many people out there that I could see where they don't want to spend hours on the phone trying to navigate healthcare and your insurance, and fighting the pharmacy, or constantly fighting the pharmacy, which was another factor. Because then everybody always just tells you, well, why don't you go to another pharmacy? And it's like, no, they're all the same way. They're all doing the same thing. You're just simply trying to get that medication that's going to help you go to the next day. So it's just always frustrating all around.
And it's hard because they can't relate to you. And sometimes when people are not in the thick of it, they just kind of put their opinions out there and expect that you're going they're helping, but they're not helping. I mean, I guess we can get to it later. What would you want people to really say to you? Because some people may need to get a little check on what they should say during a time when it's very frustrating. Some things not to say, some things to say.
Yeah.
And I want to add to anyone that's listening that might be going through this, do not be afraid to get a second opinion. I love doctors. Most of the ones that I was dealing with,
Yeah.
they meant well, and they wanted the best, but they know, and we know, they don't know everything. And any doctor worth their salt will tell you that you know you better than they will ever know you. And so if you feel like something is wrong or you feel like something is just not off, voice that, bring it up. Don't be afraid to, just by Googling what it might be. And I asked them, could it be Brown-Sequard syndrome? And then they came back, they said, oh, yes. Yeah, actually, you do have Brown-Sequard syndrome. So ask those questions. Get a second opinion.
Yeah.
If they're offended by it, definitely the wrong doctor.
Yeah. Oh, well, about their ego. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
It's your life, it's your body, it's your daughter's life, it's their daughter's body, it's your son's life, it's your son's body. Advocate for your body, advocate for your children, advocate for your people.
And the healthcare system is broken, and they are victims of it as well. When I was in physical therapy, I will never forget, my physical therapist was like, well, at least you can walk.
Oh, I know they didn't.
Ooh.
I was like, I am 30 years old.
Relearning how to walk.
Relearning how to walk. And he's bringing up to me, he's like, I've got people that can't even, and I sympathize. I do sympathize with those people. However, I'm not going to settle just for good enough. This is my life that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So needless to say, I went to somebody else. I had to pay out of pocket, and thank God that I could. But get a second opinion.
Yeah.
Your instinct is not wrong. Follow it.
And Mike, what did it feel like when this doctor who you met, I'm assuming at CHLA, told you about the vagus nerve center? Oh Lord, the vagus nerve stimulator. Excuse me.
That's right.
And how did that feel when? Walk us through that. When you're learning about it, and then you went to try it, and then you finally did try it, and it worked. Like, what did that feel like for you?
So we had been at that hospital, living at that hospital 7 days. You're in a room, and then they induce a seizure. So my daughter had this huge seizure, and then they're coming back with the results a couple minutes later, and they're saying, "Hey, brain surgery's out of the question because her seizures are coming from 3 different areas, and you're in another room. You want to get back to your daughter." And then the doctor presents, this devastating news that you can't have brain surgery. There isn't going to be a cure. But hey, I've got this other option. So it was just, I wasn't processing anything. But when she held it up, I mean, it's only, the size of a silver dollar. And I just didn't believe that it was going to work. But it was just because I've been let down so many times for so many years. But it was our only option. And I knew that we were going to do it anyways. It was with anything. It's like, when you're presented with a surgery, I don't want to another hospital visit for my daughter, but it really was life and death. And then it turned out to be a very easy procedure. She's on her second VNS because the battery lasts up to 8 years. So she's on her second one, and she's had no hiccups since then. And beyond the seizures, it's allowed her to get back in school and just be able to kind of communicate because she wasn't heavily sedated with all this medication. And
yeah, I think that's somebody may be listening and they may say, hold up, time's out. They induced a seizure. So maybe I understand that, but I did study in the medical field just a little bit, not a lot, guys. I'm no doctor. But I would love for you to just explain to our audience today, why did they induce the seizure?
Because they're trying to pinpoint in the brain where the seizures are coming from. So a lot of times, if you're kind of, I guess the only word to use is lucky, but it'll be in your frontal lobe. So that's easy for them to operate on. So you're kind of wishing, hopefully they're going to find something. The seizure's going to be, they're going to show a little electrode going to the certain area in the brain in the front. Well, hers was at her cortex because that's where her stroke was. It was a blood clot that traveled up through her spine right in the cortex. So there was really no way to operate whatsoever. And even her percentage, like the doctor said, this is, it's about 80%, that might be a success rate. And I just thought, I got through school with all C's. That's to me.
Those are good odds.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
great. Those are
Mike-
great odds. I'm going to try it, even if it was 5%, because I do hear from, I go and I talk about epilepsy a lot, and I meet parents that are afraid that they don't want to do a seizure. They don't want to surgery, and then they think, well, I don't want this object in my body or my kid's body or whatever. Like, she doesn't even know that it's there. It's very unnoticeable, and she's just living her best life right now. And so a lot of it is just fear. We all run on fear, and it's the fear of going to the hospital again or going through that procedure. And it was just like I tell everybody about it. I would do it a billion times because it saved her life.
Will your daughter have to redo this again throughout her life, the vagus nerve stimulator? How often will she have to get a new one?
So the good part is because of the setting. So hers will last 8 years. But the other great part is, and I thought of this in the beginning too, was the technology is catching up to us. So there's always new technology where there's a company in Belgium that's developing a rechargeable battery. So, and that was something that before was, oh, great, a rechargeable battery. Then you never have to do the surgery, which the surgery is really, it's in about an hour and it's outpatient. But I have a lot of faith in that it's going to get so much better. And then the longer that she goes not having a seizure, the more her brain it's repairing itself. I mean, that the VNS is putting her brain back on track and allowing her, not to have pretty much amnesia, not being able to have brain fog and not have headaches and all the, insomnia, all the stuff that we all kind of take for granted. Cause she would have, she'd have a seizure at school and then, she couldn't remember. It would usually be like right before a test. Well, she didn't remember anything. Her mind is blank. And then the teacher's just like, she's lazy. The teacher never said a nice thing. It was always very negative.
I have a quick question for you right quick, if you don't mind. Is a seizure considered a disability?
Yes and no. Because of the fact that there's no laws in place, they didn't have to recognize it. So it's supposed to be, but so many times I've been up against, telling people, hey, this is a disability. Oh yeah, no. And one of the laws that I'm working on now is to get law enforcement to recognize seizures, because law enforcement 100% of the time just says, oh, you're drunk. Which just so irritates me, because these are people on first responders on front line. They shouldn't be able to identify a seizure and not think that that my child is intoxicated.
Yeah.
I have a question, Mike. So how much time passed between that first seizure and the vagus nerve stimulator being put in? How much time passed?
That's another great question too. So the very first time when she was 2 and she had a seizure, we were told at Children's Hospital, no, just a fever seizure. She's fine. It's a one-time thing. So she was no medication for a year, and we weren't watching her at night because we just thought, we were told, oh, everything's great. And so she, for a whole year, didn't have seizures. And then when she turned 3, she was having them all the time. So that was between 2 to, she got the first one at the age of 8. So within that 6 years, it was in and out of the hospital, just trying to figure out what was going on. And just being very resentful of all the horrible information that I got from everyone in the medical field. And
Absolutely.
that's why I get to come on here and
6
vent
years.
about it.
And now she's a junior in high school, right?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Yeah. Mike, what did it feel like when she got the vagus nerve stimulator and you saw her essentially becoming her true self, being able to do the things that she wasn't able to do before? As a parent, what did that feel like? I'm assuming joy, but just walk us through that day where you saw her, making breakfast and getting herself ready and doing all those things that you've been wanting your child to be able to do for so long. And, this thing was out of your own control that was holding her back.
Yeah, one of the big things was it was like a light switched on. And I couldn't really tell in the beginning if the vagus nerve stimulator was working or not. I just was I was writing stuff down going, oh, that's different. But that one day it was the big thing for me was I do stand-up comedy, and she couldn't, prior to that, comprehend jokes like sarcasm. And that was very hard for me. It's hard for me to talk about this. I feel selfish by saying that, but just I couldn't joke around with my own kid. And it was very hard for me. And so that day, she was so happy and had this just, life inside of her. And she told me her first joke.
Do you remember it?
I'm about
Yeah,
to cry.
it was a
love
dad
that.
joke. It was a horrible dad joke. It was like, how does a cow do math? A calculator. And I was on the way to school, and
I
and this, the
love
sun
it.
was out. It was just a perfect day. Um, and it was just
Wow.
her way of saying, I'm okay.
By the way,
So
that
beautiful.
it doesn't sound selfish. I feel like, as I'm not a parent yet, but I imagine, I know I want to be a parent one day, I think. But so we'll go back to that. But I imagine that as a parent, right, you dream about the things you want to do with your kids and the things you
Yeah.
like with your kids. So
Yeah.
you like comedy, you want to share jokes with your kid, you want to laugh with your kid. Like, that doesn't sound selfish to me. That sounds right. And I'm so happy that you're able to have that with your daughter now. So
Yeah, same.
So, what message would you give to, or would you like to share with families or doctors or the broader community about epilepsy and epilepsy awareness?
My main thing is just to have compassion and understand, because I said before we were so alienated. If you know somebody that their family is going through something, you can send a text message, whatever it is. I know people get awkward about it and they just kind of shut down. They don't want to talk about it, but send a gift card, send some food, something, as simple as that, which is just to let those people know that you're thinking of them. And then from my end, it was like not trying to take it personal from people that kind of cut us off because they just didn't know how to deal with it. And for somebody that's going through it, our focus was always on my daughter and my daughter getting better. And you really do understand, like, the world is going on without you. You can't kind of be regretful about it. You can't be upset at other people. And it really just makes you thankful and you feel, gratitude and blessed for every day that you have. And you really don't see that when you're kind of going along and everything's great. It really does take something huge like this to really look at life and go, yeah, I'm pretty lucky to be here.
I love that. Is there any communities that you discovered that maybe resources other parents can reach out to, maybe that they're going through? Like when you said you were in the hospital and there was very limited support and, you felt very lonely during that time.
Yeah, I have made great friends. One of them is there's a podcast called Brain Ablaze, and he's somebody he's somebody that has had brain surgery for his epilepsy and that cured his epilepsy. And he's always advocating. And then there's another one which is Talk About It, which is another podcast, which is Greg Grunberg's. He's an actor, and his son also got the VNS and is successful with it. So there's definitely ones out there. It's just that the larger ones, I think, kind of get caught in politics. So the smaller ones, I see the smaller organizations, I think, are a lot better.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah.
This is going to be so helpful. I'm so excited to share this episode with my family. And I hope that this has already brought a lot more awareness to me as an aunt. And I believe it will do that for communities of people who know people who are going through the exact same thing. So I just want to thank you again for coming on the Resilience Files and talking with us and sharing your story. It's been wonderful.
It truly has. Thank you. And thank you for being resilient when it comes to advocating for your daughter. Like, that's very admirable.
Thank you. And it was
Absolutely.
it was great connecting with you and hearing your story also and what you guys have been through.
For sure. And listeners, we really hope today's episode not only inspired you with Mike's resiliency and his wife as they advocated for their daughter. If you're advocating for someone today, we ask you to just continue to lean into that fight. Know that resources are available and people do care. And if you feel helplessness, reach out to someone. Know that you're not alone. Even through the difficult situations, people are there. People do care. We love you. We hope that you can share this episode with somebody that may be in a situation like this or needs some inspiration, hope. Know that there is light right around the corner for them. Thank you again so much, Mike. And this is the Resilience Files.
Yeah. As always, thank you for tuning in. We really hope that you enjoyed hearing Mike's story as much as we did. Follow us on all social media platforms at The Resilience Files and subscribe wherever you get platforms. If you have a story of resilience that you want to share with us, send us an email, resifiles@gmail.com, or visit our website at www.theresiliencefiles.com. Until next time, as always, stay resilient.
And Mike, quick cue while we're rolling. Do you have socials that you
Oh,
could
yeah.
share with us that maybe anyone could reach out to you if you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, your
If
stand-up
you do,
comedy.
yeah, share them right now.
Mike, they can find me on MikeKnox.com or any other social media, Mike Knox Comedy.
Awesome.